Hi, this is Trevor Conquergood. Welcome to this week's RNK Software Club's video for the week, and the topic for this week is going to be about the exciting style of embroidery called ripple fill, and I thought we could take another look at some more designs made with that tool. And so what I'm going to do is just go ahead and open up my custom art library and pop up a cute little shape of a butterfly. And the tool I'm looking for is down here at the bottom. It's right here. It says Ripple Fill. So let's go ahead and click on Ripple Fill. And it's pretty much an instant result kind of thing. It gets a lot of wows. It's got a very cool effect to it. And as you can see, the stitching kind of starts in the middle and it'll go around and around and around and around and contour your shape until it reaches the outer edge. Sometimes when I do designs like this, I will select them and copy them and paste them and make the one that comes second a run stitch. And then maybe if you want to really make sure it has a nice defined outline, you could change to a double run instead of a single run in your drop down. Or if you want to do a triple run, then you need to move over to the run extra tab. It's kind of like a second tab in your properties box where you can do bean style and turn on bean, and then you can do a 3-ply or a 5-ply or a 7 or a 9 or 11-ply. And so that would kind of really help define that outer edge. So maybe on screen right now it doesn't sort of, really show that it matters, but you'll find in the stitch outs that it just gives a kind of defined edge to the shape. So certainly optional, but kind of a tip for it. One of the things that's really neat about the ripple fill, if I just select that butterfly again and look to the properties box, because there's quite a few things that you can do to adjust the way it's going to turn out. Now, of course, you can adjust the stitch length and the density like always. And so, as you know, the stitch length is the distance from kind of like one needle penetration to the next one. You can see those if you actually turn on over here your stitch points and then turn off your 3D. See how you can actually see all the needle points. And, if you want to lengthen them, sure, go ahead and come in here, change it from 2.5 to 3, click apply. It's going to make a few less stitches in your design, and they'll be a little bit longer. The other one is the density, and it's set currently at sort of 2. So what that means is kind of between the rows, the distance is 2. If you change it to 3, well, there'll be more distance between the rows and therefore less rows of stitches. And so those are, common things that I'll adjust on, not just ripple fill, but a lot of things. But what's cool on the ripple fill is the gradient option. So when you go to the gradient option, you've got increasing and decreasing and convex and concave. And if you just choose one of them, so increasing, we'll start with the most open ripple and then get closer and closer and closer as it gets to the outside. And decreasing will be the opposite, so it's going to start with the most sort of tightest ripple and get further and further apart as you go to the outside. And the other two are convex and concave. So convex starts open, gets dense, gets back open again. And concave is the opposite. Starts dense, goes open, and then gets sort of like dense again. So if I do concave and then click apply, you'll really see the difference. And now you can also adjust the density. So if I could put the density back down to 2, you get more of that concave look. If you put it to 1, you get even more of it. So really it's up to you how to set your settings and how to make your sort of design look cool. But that's one of the neat things about the ripple fill, as you've got this gradient properties. Another thing that's cool about the ripple fill, and maybe just to make this kind of simple, I'll do a basic shape like an ellipse and select it, fill it with the ripple. So I'm going to make the spacing a little bit further apart to make room for a decorative stitch. And you can make it, very far apart if you need to, 6, 8, 10, whatever it is. Because now what I want to do is, instead of using a single run, you could change that to be a double run, but you could also change that to be a motif. And when you go to a motif, you look here for the pattern, and so you can choose any one of the patterns that we have, and there's lots and hundreds, and as you know, you can make your own patterns, right? So whatever pattern you choose will become the decoration along that line. And this is where I'm saying, I kind of need to open up the distance between the lines or I'm going to have a really dense embroidery design. And so it's a cool tool, but you do have to have some kind of common sense when you're using it as to like how many stitches is it. Because just look now, it says there's 20,000 stitches in this overall design. So I guess that's both the butterfly and the ellipse. But if I hit undo, the whole thing went down to 5,600. So bear in mind that if you're going to use the ripple with a motif, you probably need to open up the spacing of the motif so that there's less rows and more room to put the actual motif pattern into. And that will give you a very unique look. And of course, one of the neat things about ripple was that you could move the point where it starts. And to do that, you clicked on your shape tool. So with the shape tool, if I move it to, let's say, down here, then when I click apply or hit enter, it'll change the rippling. And remember, we looked at doing this 3D in the past and how you can move this point outside and create like almost like a little bit of a tornado kind of effect to it. And so it's a really fun tool. Lots of creative things to do. The butterfly turns out kind of like this, right? So this I believe looks like it has the stitch out that I made has an increasing profile. So you can see it's got a gradient where it's the most in sort of space in the middle, getting closer and closer and closer together as it goes around the shape to getting towards the outside. And then a little bit of an extra sort of strong border along the outside. And sometimes I think I suggested the bean stitch. And another one that I often use is the backstitch. And the backstitch is actually made by using a preset. So presets, meaning if I right click over top of the run stitch tool down at the bottom, there's other options. Now, I have one that says 3mm, double. Well, you probably don't have that. That's because you're allowed to make your own. But today, I just wanted to point out we all have, because I know this gets installed with the software, the backstitch. And if you choose the backstitch, you'll notice the stitch gets a little bit thicker because when it does the kind of bean stitch style of stitching where it goes forward, and then back again, but when it goes back again, it kind of steps a little bit off to the side, makes a little bit of thickness to that stitch. So it still looks like an outline, but it's a little bit more of a thicker outline, I guess. Not as thick as a real steel stitch, right? Because that would be another, now we could click over here on steel and get quite a defined border. But with the backstitch, you right click over run, you click on backstitch, it does a triple outline, but with a little extra thickness to it. So yeah, let's take a look at one more, and this time there's an extra little trick to getting it to work out great because the shape's kind of complicated, and it's this maple leaf I'm just looking for. A lot of times when I scroll through my custom shapes, you may notice that I have custom shapes that you don't. You might not have a hat with a band on it. Well, that's because you're also allowed to create your own custom shapes and add them to your custom shape library. And so I know that we all have the leaf. That's one that comes with the software. If I click on leaf, it'll open that up. And basically it's the shape of a maple leaf. And if you click on ripple, it works. The only thing is, notice the way the stem, and when you do a ripple like this, you can kind of see where, because of the way it goes around, there'll be areas where the stitching is heavier and where it's more open. And that's just the nature of following the shape, that it gets kind of darker. But you can move that point around, like I was saying, to kind of find the best effect of it. So if I pull that down, right away that leaf kind of looks better, and we have a lot less of that kind of darker areas going on. Not that they're wrong, it's just it looks more attractive to me when I pull it down like that. Only the stem was kind of my issue with it. I wasn't unhappy with the really heavy stitching kind of down here at the bottom, and so it's not as open and decorative as I was hoping for. So this is my kind of solution to that. What I'm going to do, and I love this about FTCU, you can fill in a shape with thread, but if you don't like it, you can just click on the artwork tool, and that's like an eraser. It just goes back to the original piece of artwork. And what I'm going to do, and the reason I converted it into artwork, is because I wanted to use one of the knife tools. We have several different knife tools that are available, and the knife tools only work on artwork. You can't cut up embroidery with them, but you can cut up the shapes if you take the thread out of them. So I'm going to click on the magnet one, and I'll just kind of zoom down here, get close to it, and click on that node, and see how I can pull my mouse over, my cursor over to the other side. And so when I click on the other side, it drew that line, and now if I right click, I actually cut that shape into two shapes. If you look in your sequence view, you'll see that. There's now the stem piece that is separate from the leaf piece. And so now I can do the leaf piece as a ripple. And I get a little bit nicer result, because when I click on the ripple tool, and it goes around and around and around, and then I click on the shape tool, and I move the point for the ripple down to kind of like here, so that I get sort of that nice look. But then for the stem, I'm going to do it differently. And so for the stem, what I'll do, I could either click on the stem and do a ripple for that, so it's got its own kind of ripple, or another way of doing this, and I'm just going to hit undo, would be to select on the stem and do it as a contour satin. So contour satin, you kind of have to understand how the satin path tool works, right? Because when I click on this, it's sort of waiting for us to show it the inclination. It needs at least one angle line. And so you have to like click and drag. It's kind of waiting. It shows you that little black bead on the cursor, says, you know, draw your inclinations. You can put in as many as you want, but you just have to have a minimum of one. And when you right click, it allows you to interact with the green starting point and the red exit point. And so I could make it start and stop kind of up at the top there. And now when I right click, it'll put the stitching in. And see how the stitching goes kind of nice and neat and organized like this, back and forth. As always, I could select that and come in here and change the density. If you want more open spacing, make it a bigger number. If you want more stitching in there, make it a smaller number. I'm going to make it 0.5 instead of 1 and click apply, and you'll get a bunch more of it. You know, and so you're really just trying to make it look like it belongs. You know, I might pull it up a little bit, underlap a little bit, and then it sews first, and I set it so that it would finish stitching kind of like here at the top. So then when I do my maple leaf, if you study the way the ripple fill sews, the ripple fill will always start at the center, right? So the shape that we have, that's this maple leaf, what's going to happen is it's going to get to the end of that stem right there, and then it's going to have to jump into the center. So there'll be like a tie off here and a little tie in there. So if you want to avoid that, if you don't want your machine to stop and trim and then jump and start again, and you just thought, why can't it just sew over there? It totally can. But you have to kind of take the control, and so you have to understand how it's working. And then once you understand that, all you really need is one more shape. Look, I can just click on this pencil and click on the basic line tool, and then draw a line that goes click here and click there. So basically that's it. Right click, you drew a line. So notice now in that brown color, you've got like a stem, you've got the leaf shape, and then you've got this artwork that we just drew, this line right here. Well, I'm going to make that line a run stitch, and I'm going to move it up in sequence so that it sews after the stem and before the leaf. And because I can see the color brown is like listed twice, I'm just going to click on the first piece, hold down shift, click on the last piece to select all of those pieces, and then I'm going to click on the same color again in my color palette, and that tells the program that it's all one color stop. You know, and don't stop the machine in between. And so now when it sews out that maple leaf and it gets to the end of that stem, so we'll just kind of quickly get there. So it does that stem and then notice right there, it's got that run stitch that kind of walks from here to there. And so that's how you can connect them all together. And that's how you can do something like a cool sort of leaf like that. I quite often find it's a little bit extra dramatic if you select your leaf and maybe give it like one of those gradient properties. And so we could do like an increasing property on that too. Looks cool like that. And then like always, so take note of where it finishes sewing right there. Select that run stitch or that outline of your leaf, copy it and paste it. And the one that goes on top, make it right click, a backstitch. And so now you've got your leaf, and make sure that you're backstitched. So just select that last segment, choose your shape tool, and see that this entry point and the exit point are also at the top of the leaf. So now you know that they're going to be perfectly connected, so that when it finishes the ripple, it'll just go straight into the backstitch around it. And yeah, so that's just shows creating a few designs today using a cool, fun tool, the Ripple Fill tool, and what they look like when you stitch them out. And so I hope that you enjoyed this week's R&K Software Club's video for the week. And until next week, have a wonderful day. Thanks very much, and bye for now.